Good evening. My name is Billy Edwards. I'm here to discuss the history of my family. Basically, I wanted to talk about my grandparents. My grandmother is from Arkansas, Little Rock, born and raised. My grandfather was born and raised in Richmond, California. And basically, he would take jobs in different states, different cities, and one job put him in Arkansas, Little Rock. And apparently, my grandmother happened to be working at a club that he happened to go gamble at one night, and they had met and ended up having kids together. 10 beautiful kids, six boys, six girls, and 4 boys. Um, my grandmother began to travel back and forth from California into Arkansas with my grandfather until they permanently moved into California, Richmond, California, about 4 or 5 years after they got together. By that time, they already had 8 kids together. My dad was not yet born. My dad was later born about a year before they moved completely to Arkansas. I mean to California. Um, my grandmother um, had a house in Richmond, California, where it my auntie left a heater by the blanket, and the blanket caught on fire, and the house ended up burning down. And um, being from Arkansas, she didn't have a lot to her name already, so they were pretty much homeless for a minute until my grandmother decided to go to church one day, in which she ended up meeting a church family that ended up becoming a part of the history of our family in California and became a mainstay to our family and pretty much helped us and was very instrumental in our family staying in California because without them, I'm not sure how far our family would have gotten. Um, these people could raise the collection, play a collection, offering to raise money, to help raise money for us to rebuild my grandmother's home. And the men in the church pretty much helped my grandmother and my grandfather build their home back up from scratch. And in this church, my mother and my father met and began to date, and later on was got married and had myself and my younger 2 sisters. And basically, I'm very proud of the history of my family, the history of my grandmother and grandfather, because without them, I'm not sure where my family would be. The bravery, the perseverance, and the hard work of my grandmother alone um, speaks volumes and is instilled in a lot of us, and including myself. And I try to aspire to be just like her and to never give up and to always persevere and to always see the light at the end of the tunnel of every bad situation. In any situation, when her house was burnt down, when when my grandfather was losing a bunch of their money due to gambling, she could have packed it in, she could have quit, she could have thrown in the towel, but she steadfast and kept grinding and kept believing and kept having faith that one day their luck would change, and it did. They ended up being blessed to have a 6 bedroom, 5 bathroom customized home built from the ground up by the hands of the men in the church, including my uncle and father and grandfather. And she ended up raising a beautiful family, which ended up birthing me and my cousins and another generation. And we're still going today. And the church is very much close to us all today. And I'm just thankful to be a part of the history of the church and the history of my family in the church and the history of the Edwards and my grandmother and grandfather to start a beautiful tradition. And hopefully I can continue and leave a legacy as great as the ones that they left. Um, there was no sad moments in the story. I'm very happy and grateful to say that I had grandparents to do as much as they did, to sacrifice as much as they did. My grandmother will always be a hero of mine. My grandfather died when I was about 9, so I didn't really get a chance to meet him. Um, and without the sacrifices and without the the hardships and without the struggling and the striving of my grandparents, I'm not sure I would be here today. Um, my grandparents is revered amongst um, many, and their story speaks for itself. And I just can't say enough how appreciative I am to be a part of their lineage, to be a part of their bloodline, and it's crazy how things come together. I mean, who would have ever known that um, a man from California would meet a lady from Arkansas and give birth to a generation to a family that 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 is still alive and still flourishing and is still um, keeping up the tradition that they laid for us, the foundation that they laid. The 6 bedroom, 5 bathroom house that was blessed for them by the church, by God, is still there. It's still paid for. It's still maintained, and God is still watching over all of us. And it's all started with my grandparents, and I'm just thankful and grateful and in awe of their story. And I hope you guys enjoyed my story, and I hope you guys enjoyed the history of my family. And have a good night.